Hello everybody, how's everybody doing? They're all doing great. Okay. So, yeah, today I'm going to be working on my Tyranids. I got a whole new setup and stuff going on down here in my new apartment, so it is a very different view. I got a very different setup, but the upside is I no longer have my camera, like, about right here. Now I actually have a, and I appreciate this, but I have a desk-mounted handle for my DSLR, which before I didn't have. I just had a standard tripod, so typically I had to film these very much close to my face, you know, stretching myself all the way out so I could barely like fit on the table, things like that. It would make streaming miniature painting extremely difficult, and it would hurt my back a lot more because again I'd be like entirely sprawled out. But thankfully with this new setup I don't have to worry about that. Of course, if you guys do not really like the overhead camera view, let me know, and I will go back to, you know, that way. It will be more trouble for me, but if it makes a better experience for you guys, of course, it's always worth it, and I entirely want to make you guys have an enjoyable experience watching me paint. So, anyway, this is an example of a finished, or at least as finished as, you know, I want the army standard to be, for my Tyranid warriors. I do have to black rim the miniature base, but other than that, this guy is pretty much done. I will, in the future, and maybe even tonight, do some highlights, because it is just one layer of red with the wash. I might, you know, it's been like that for a while, and as I've been thinking it over, I might do like a lighter or orange kind of highlight across him, since he's a warrior, but we'll see. We'll see. So, for now, let's set this guy down. And we're going to be working on... Oh yeah, I should also probably give a couple examples of what the Hormagaunts look like. This is one of my Hormagaunts. And as you can see, like, the base style, I like its contrast with, like, the bright red and black and gold of the actual Tyranids. But this guy and all of them have a dark purple base with like a dry brush of a really bright purple, almost pink. So I do like the contrast that kind of gives each unit, and it makes them stand out on the tabletop a lot. So that I think is awesome. Of course I'm biased because I'm the one who decided to do that. So anyway, we're gonna get started on this guy. Nice and secure. I really don't like the new handles they have for set it up. This isn't a new handle, but I'm just kind of complaining about the previous. Blitz 12 or Blitz 0012. Value, welcome. Tyranid, yes. This is a Tyranid warrior, and this is a Tyranid Hormagaunt. Of course, recently they've, you know, with the 10th edition and the Leviathan update, a lot of the these Hormagaunts and Termagaunts now have like different base sizes. So these old ones that I have, they're only going to be good for home games or custom games with friends. They're not going to be good for tournament play, which is a downside. It does force me to have to pick up the original... sorry, not the original. It forces me to pick up the new ones released, but oh well. Yeah, I think most people hate it when they change the base sizes because it invalidates all of the miniatures you've already bought, so you got to buy new ones if you want to play the official tournaments. Which, it sucks, but that's the way it goes. Alright, so let's start with the base. Get that out of the way. Because I got a dry brush around it anyway. Can I just glue the correct sized base to the bottom of the old one? Unfortunately, not with these guys because... Right there. Boom. See that? These guys, it's not just a matter of snipping it off the base. It's actually into the base. Now, with a warrior, I could more feasibly do that. I'd risk breaking the plastic and damaging it. But it's more possible to do it with that. With removing a Hormagaun or a Termagaunt, they're directly embedded into the base as part of their structure. So removing it, I'd have to snip it in just the right spot, and that right spot is, in this case, covered by texture and painted on sand. So, unfortunately, no. I can't just take them off and put them on a new base. Not without going extremely out of my way. So, yeah, unfortunately, no. I believe the Warriors, though, at least are at the same size. Or similar. Well, really, the height isn't as much of an issue. It's the diameter of the base. That's what's most important in a war game. If that's wrong, then it's all screwed. Height of the actual miniature, not so much. That doesn't matter too much. Unless you're playing a really anal game about like the verticality, then some people will really be like on your butt about that. But most people will, like, the verticality aspect doesn't really matter. It's entirely down to the diameter of the base. That seems to be like the actual crux of the issue. I don't think I need to mix any black in it, but it is royal purple, so. Perhaps a little bit will be wise. Hey, Matthew Gordon, some of the new big minis are pretty wild. I mean, yeah, I've seen some of them. They look pretty cool. Hey, Paris. Welcome to the stream. I'm just getting a good mix down the wet palette. You're a leaf on the stream. I see. Better than a moth on the stream. Moths would be very distracting. See that flutter of like white go by you. Yeah. Before the stream today, I was working on the next episode of the Vox Radio show. The second episode is going to take me a lot longer to do because I got to draw like a whole new set of faces for a couple of the characters on the show. And it's not just a matter of like changing a couple of details on the face. I need to like redraw their poses. So I was hoping to avoid that after, you know, I finished the script and did all the audio recording. But now that I'm in an editing phase, I'm like, nah, there's no way for me to edit around that and make it like cool or look good or feel fluid. It just feels weird. So I'm definitely gonna have to edit, like, redraw those. But who will? It's worth it for the end product. I'm looking for high quality after all. What do you think about the new epic scale? The new epic scale, I don't have strong feelings about it. I think it's okay. Like, I've heard some of my... the thing is, I didn't get to play old school epic, so this is coming from somebody who would be new to that. I've just been playing mainly, like, normal 40k. I didn't ever play, like, epic before. So, having not played the original scales for epic or anything like that, I don't really know. Like, I don't know how it would differ, really. But from just speculation and what I've heard about the original epic versus new, I think it's okay. It looks pretty cool. There's nothing for me to complain about, that's for sure. I like it. Don't be soaring near what? I think some of the new bugs are as big as the knights. I mean, I would hope so. I think some of the newest ones are. If it's the ones I'm thinking about, I'm trying to remember their names. I can hardly paint the current ones. Left my ass off. Epic scales way out of my league. I mean, yeah, I get that. Trust me, I do. Me, I have like magnification glasses. I know that sounds like cool, but it's really just glasses with like a magnification lens on them. I have a couple of those, so I think I'm confident I could attempt to paint epic scale minis, but that might be bold of me to say. But I totally get like why some people would be disinterested in epic minis on the painting front, at least, because it's really tiny, minuscule shit. But at the same time, like depending on how you look at it, it might be easier to paint a whole army of epic than it is like 40k or Sigmar or Warhammer Fantasy. Or like 12 other games I could list off that aren't GW, but you know what I mean. Like armies with like detailed models that are much bigger that kind of beg to be painted in detail. Man, it's an 8 times magnification. Well, I'm not wearing them right now, not for this. And my eyes are pretty good for miniatures this size. But for like really tiny details, for example, like on my Stompa for my orcs, like there's a lot of really small details if you pay attention that are kind of hard to see with the naked eye. But if you put on those magnification like glasses, you can really see them. Some like intentional like faults or bolts kind of hanging out here and there that you might have missed if you're just looking at it natively. And to be fair, like even painting or putting effort into the detailing of that might not be worth it since most people won't catch it with their eyes. But you know, it's still fun for me, so it's kind of like kind of worth it for me to do it. But I can totally get like why someone else wouldn't be totally hyped for like epic scale stuff, at least traditionally. Any benefit to basing first, by the way? Personally, basing first, it allows me to paint it along with the mini. Well, sorry, prime it, but with the rest of the mini and then paint it. It also depends on the type of basing you're doing, though, I should say. Because this stuff is all glued on material. Like, this is mainly, like, sand gravel I bought, like, from a hobby store. And I just kind of spread it out. I glued it on with normal PVA glue and let it dry. And then did, like, a water PVA glue mix to wash over it to hopefully seal it. It didn't really work because some of it's kind of peeling off right now. But hopefully the paint will act as a sealer after this. But in the case of this, I'd say the benefit is that I can prime it with the rest of the mini and then paint it to the color that I want it to be. Whereas if I were to base it after the miniature is already primed and glued on, I would have to have the basing material already the way I want it to look to put it on. So if you have like a texture paint, for example, from like Green Stuff World and stuff like that, and it's the color and it's the shade and it's the texture that you already want it, then yeah, like you can prime, paint, do all that with the miniature first and then put the basing on last. And it'll look great. It'll look fine. But for me, this stuff doesn't look natively purple. You know, it doesn't look like this, you know, out of like the box or the bag. So I glue it on with the miniature when it's still plastic and prime it with everything so I can then paint it to the color or shade that I want. If you do it really just depends on what your goal with your basing is. If your basing material is just like natively the way you're going to glue it on looks the way you want it to look, then you would glue it on last. Like, it would be the last thing that you do. But in my case, that's not the case with my stuff. So the benefit depends on your approach. But in the case of my approach, the benefit is that I can paint it along with the miniature. It's kind of like the roundabout way to explain it. I think I got all the purple down. Let it dry for... Oh, I missed a couple spots. I will say this about my magnification glasses. The weird thing about them is that, like, when you have them on, it can actually kind of fuck with like your vision. Like when you do it for like a couple hours straight with those glasses on and you take them off, your eyes are all screwed up. You might need those special glasses with Conflict 47. It has some small bits. I probably will. It probably will. I mean, so far it looks like the U.S. Army is the starter set that people are recommending for me to get first. I thought that was kind of curious for me because I was expecting people to be like, "Oh, the Germans to meme," or to like the Soviets to meme, but like everyone's like, "Nah, the USA." I'm like, wow. I was actually not expecting that. But at the same time, for me, it was a dead tie between those factions for Conflict 47 because they all looked like they had really cool mechs, and the base miniature armies looked pretty cool. So for me, it was like, you know, I wanna play the Germans because they got like they got those like werewolf units. At least I think that was, or was that the Soviets? I don't know. Point is, like, each of their mechs were really compelling. I really like the mechs for USA, like the mechs for Soviets, like the mechs for Germans. Their base units all looked pretty cool. Would be fun to paint, kind of like my guard. You know, for me, it was like just a dead tie between all three: U.S. Army, Soviets, and Germans. So I am happy people helped me out with the poll, but I was surprised USA was gonna win though. Like I was expecting German or Soviet, but you know, I'm pleasantly surprised. You know, support for the USA, USA. All right, so while that dries, we'll next apply the red. The upside with this, the High Fleet Behemoth scheme is red and black, like cornate colors. It's really simple. Again, like this painting these guys is really simple. This is an example of a model I'm not going to do what I'm going to possibly do for the Warriors or bigger, which is I'm going to do highlight shades on all the raised areas on the miniature to give it like that popping effect. Like a slightly brighter red or orange for like the highlights. Yeah, I'm not going to do that for the Hormagaunts or Termagaunts in my army because they just don't really hold as well. That and there's so many of them that amount of effort putting into these guys is already a bit much. The edge highlight as alone is already going to drag time for doing each one. But I think it'll be totally worth it. Thin out my red. If memory serves, when I tried NIDs out, I think I painted them red, brown, yellow, and for desert stuff. Well, that sounds like it could be cool. Do you have pictures of when you did it? I'd love to see what how your approach came out. Yeah, my original idea with my NID army was like a cornate NIDs. Like a NID high fleet that got affected by corn. Problem is, after I did it, I realized that the design was pretty much just high fleet behemoth, which already looked that way, which is red, black, and like a metallic for their claws and stuff. Although I think high fleet behemoth, this is like black, but for what I went with a Retributor gold with a wash of Reikland flesh shade to make it like a bronze. So no. So that's like the one like differing thing between High Fleet Behemoth and like my cornate NIDs. That's like the one thing that differs them in factor. But you will. phase is pretty messy, but it's supposed to be. This was in HS. Horse. Wait, what? This was in HS. I gave the army to a buddy when he moved out. Oh, okay. Oh well. I'm sure it looked good though. And I'm sure your buddy appreciated it. I mean, I don't know how many points it was, but still, giving a whole army to a friend, jeez. A friend of mine did that, I'd be like, you're not committing suicide, are you? You know, this is like it's like giving me the keys to your bank or something. Like, I have some questions here. Everything okay at home? The wife not like losing her mind or something? There was only one of them old star collecting boxes, about 1k points. The old star collecting box, I don't think there's 1,000 points in NIDS in a star collecting box, is there? There's like barely 500 points in those things. Unless I'm thinking of a different star collecting box. Are you talking about like the $90 star collecting boxes? Because there's definitely not 1,000 points in there. I actually think I have a NIDS star collecting box. Yeah, it's like, I think there's barely like 200 points in there. If that, I don't know. I'd have to actually do the point right now. I definitely don't think there's 1,000 in there. That would be a shit ton more minis than there actually is in there. But if people are wondering what paints I've been using so far, for the base, I did Royal Purple with like a dab of Vallejo's native, like game color black. And the red I'm currently using is Vallejo's Bloody Red. Vallejo is like the main brand I use for painting. In your opinion, why do you think has the easiest time combating the NIDS? Oh, sorry, I misread that. Who do you think has the easiest time combating the NIDS? Orcs. Without a doubt, they have the easiest time fighting the NIDS. Because for orcs, when it comes to fighting NIDS, I just want to put those in frame because I think it'd be cooler to see like the finished product in what I'm currently working on. But the orcs have a lot of the same advantages the NIDS do. First of all, they're both factions that primarily are horde armies. Like, if you're talking about the tabletop game, then that's very different. The orcs do not have the easiest time against NIDS. But if we're talking about, like, lore, the orcs have equal to, or even possibly, arguably speaking, greater numbers than the NIDS. Additionally, the intimidation factor of Tyranids isn't really there for orcs. No faction intimidates the orcs. They are not really intimidatable, not in the same sense. For them, they do fear death, but the only reason orcs fear death is because if you die, you can't crump. It's like if I die, I can't beat up and crump at the gates. I can't die. I need to be able to crump. You know? So for them, like they need that ability. So that's the only reason orcs even really fear death. And fear is a bit of a not the correct word. They don't really fear death as much as they really want to avoid it, so as long as possible, so they can continue to crump. They likes to fight. So Tyranids don't have the intimidation factor against them, and on top of that, when it comes to their numbers advantage, that's a moot point with orcs because they are also a horde, numberless wave, just like the Nids are. Like, they're very similar in terms of their core, like the things that make them core threats to like the Imperium or the Tau. It's just one is more comical than the other is really where they kind of break away. Like, the orcs are more funny. Whereas the Nids are nuts. And savage primal monsters that want to eat you. But if we're talking about the tabletop game, I'd say Space Marines or Krons, maybe? Probably Space Marines. I mean, Space Marines are pretty much the bane of like all other armies in terms of the tabletop. So, but I'd say if it's not the Space Marines, it's probably the Necrons, because of their revival protocols and stuff like that. You get a pretty good Necron army going. You can definitely take on Tyranids and win. Even if your opponent is playing the meta. At least meta for 9th. I don't know if it will still be meta for 10th. But Crusher Stampede, that's like a pre-built army list that a lot of people run for tournaments for Tyranids. And pretty much what it is you just play a bunch of Hive Tyrants and other big monster Tyranids. And it's probably, I say probably, it is the most effective Nid strategy in tournaments for 9th. I have no idea if they've nerfed it or just made it harder to do. Or maybe they've even made it easier to do. I don't know. This is GW you're talking about, so their balancing isn't exactly, well, balancing. But, yeah. So, tabletop-wise, I'm not sure. But even against Crusher Stampede, I'd say if you built your Necron army well, you can probably take them on. Necrons because the Nids avoid them altogether. I don't know if they avoid them in the. I'd have to double check that little lore tidbit, but as far as I know, they do not avoid them. I know the Necrons avoid the Nids because when the Necrons were first coming into the galaxy, when the Nids were first coming into the galaxy, the Necrons' Silent King was the first to find them, and he fucking pelted back to the galaxy in a feverish fear of them. So I wouldn't say they avoid the Necrons. I just don't think they really encounter them that often because the Necrons avoid them. I thought the Nids avoided planets the Necrons were sleeping on. Not as far as I'm aware. That might be a lore tidbit somewhere that I missed, but as far as I'm aware, the Nids have no more fear of the Necrons than they do anything else. The Necrons were the ones who found out the Nids were coming to our galaxy. The Silent King encountered them on his travels, and he flew back in a panic. But yeah, as far as I know, they don't avoid. They don't avoid Necron worlds. If that's mentioned in a book, it might be a one-off mention. One of those things where a single author wanted to hype up the Necrons as a super powerful faction, but in every other book, as Black Libraries want to do, the lore doesn't really hold water. Small details like that anyway don't. Saying it was never overtly said, just hinted at in older lore. Yeah. Yeah, and this is the beauty of 40k lore. There is a canon, despite what people like the Temple and Institute tell you. but it's just it is a soft cannon. A lot of the finer details are really not reliable, but like the broad timeline is the most reliable thing. But the minor or specific details are where things really start to like divide. Oh, I nicked one of the rocks. That's okay, I'll just put more purple on it. It'll be fine. Yeah, I'm doing 2 thin coats, so I'm trying to go all the way around. Suppose they might avoid a Necron roll because it's not worth it. No biomass. I will say that makes the most sense for why a Nid would avoid the Necrons, is they're just not worth the effort because you can't eat them. Because the Nids don't care about like tech or technology at all. They care about biomass, and the Necrons don't provide that. So that would make sense why the Nids would be like, Necrons, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. Not my business. I got most of the base coat there already. Most, I said most. It's not done yet. Let me see. Suppose they might avoid a Necron roll. Oh, I read that. Sorry. So, for what armies or miniatures is everybody working on in the chat right now? And I don't mean necessarily like what you're working on just as you're watching the stream, because I don't know if you guys are, but like, what are the latest miniature projects everybody's working on? I'm curious. Because for me, I've been jumping around between projects. Most of my orc army is painted at this point, so you know, I definitely have enough painted that, you know, if I want to go to a tournament, I can go with a fully painted army. Not that they make you anymore anyway, but, you know, I still prefer to go with, like, a painted army. Just is a personal preference. Just finished 3D printing an Imperial Knight. Nice. And a Senator Walker for your Maccabean Janissaries. That says a battle army. Nice, 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 nice. Just need to assemble. Well, get to it, lad. You've been jumping around from historical stuff. I'm assuming bolt action, or are we talking a different historical war game? And Aurora Marines from Etsy. Ooh. Are those resin? Yep, some bolt action. And Napoleonic French. Ooh. I think they're a resin, yeah. Pretty chunky minis. Of course, everybody likes the chunk. Honestly, some of the most fun miniatures to paint are really big ones. I can understand why Gundam's so popular. Because that's all just really big plastic kits and stuff. Actually, I'm not even sure if you'd call them miniatures. Are Gunpla called miniatures or referred to them like that anywhere? I don't think so. I think they're referred to as like action figures that you paint. I could be wrong though. I could be like dead wrong. I don't call it Gunpla, so I couldn't say. But I think so. I don't think they're referred to as minis. If they are, then I think that's like incorrect. I suppose they are miniature in technicality compared to what they are scaled in like their, you know, like in the anime and stuff, but not so miniature compared to like actual other miniature franchise. I mean, by that kind of like, you know, Titans, stuff like in 40K. Ask It's a Gundam. Well, if I'm ever on speaking terms with It's a Gundam, I'll ask. I don't believe I will be, but who knows? Speaking of other content creators, though, I stopped in on Morty and Glory's stream. I don't know if he's still going right now, but Morty and Glory was streaming earlier today. He was working on some stuff, and by God, I really gotta, you know, I gotta step up my streaming game, because that man really had a great stream like environment, like super energetic. He was playing music and stuff. I think some of it copyrighted too. So I'm wondering if like maybe I've been like understanding the copyright system a little wrong. Maybe if I don't know. Like maybe I'll get a chance to ask him. But you know, I was checking out his stream, and boy was it entertaining, boy was it fun, and there were lots of people there. It was cool. It was cool. So if you guys ever get a chance to like stop by Morty and Glory's streams and stuff, I recommend it. He's a pretty cool guy. But what was I saying? I don't know. There was some I totally like lost track of what else I was gonna say. But yeah, Morty and Glory, awesome dude. Actually, he was really cool because he linked me and like mentioned me as a kind of. I didn't even think he knew about me. So when I jumped into stream, I was just like, I'm gonna hang out here while I'm editing and listen in and have a little fun here and there. But as soon as I dropped like a super chat, like not a huge one, I don't have enough money to drop any like big ones. Well, I dropped a couple like bucks to him and said, hey man, cool. I hope you're enjoying having miniature painting. And he's like, Asmogan, man, I know you. Yeah, he's like, yeah, I remember like the Midwinter mini controversy and stuff. You were covering it. And I'm like, holy shit, he knows I exist. I don't know. Like sometimes I think I underestimate like how known I am. I know I'm known by some bigger 40K creators, not just 40K, but like bigger miniature painting, this hobby sphere creators. But most of them that I know of me don't like me. So I said most. Keep in mind, like I know Arch and I get along. Arch and I we're cool. Me and Arch get along. Kibbs isn't really a miniature, war gaming kind of person. So in the case of Kibbs, we're good friends and we get along as well, but not really part of the sphere. And again, like I know of a small slew of 40K creators or Warhammer creators who just don't like me and have like written me off. But it was cool it was cool that Morty and Glory knew I existed. I'm not fanboying or anything. Like Morty and Glory's a cool guy. I just it's just sometimes I just don't think most people know I exist. But maybe it's just because I'm getting too much like locked in the headspace of like, I only have 5,000 subs. Not many people could know me. I think maybe I'm just like not thinking about it enough. I need to have some water because it's starting to dry. If that's ruder than to write me off. Well, I kind of accepted that was going to happen. I know a few of them did it because of the Arch Warhammer controversy. 2 years ago now? Has it been that long? I think it's been that long. 2 years ago? Where there was like screenshots of his Discord that people cherry-picked like single comment like lines from his Discord, and people were claiming like, oh, see, this is proof that Arch is this, that, or the other, bad, evil, nasty, bleh. And I simply went on. I made 2 videos, if I recall correctly, and the first video was just me talking about the controversy, and I was like, and this is before I had even 1,000 subs. I had like, I want to say 400 on this channel, 400, 500 subs, barely. And I made a video about it, like saying, hey, this is kind of bullshit that people are just going after him and attacking him. And Lore Master Sotek, I think, went after him during that period as well. Like, a lot of people were going after Arch. And I saw it as completely unfair. It was complete bullshit. Like, one moment, it was dead silence. Most of these creators, most of them actually, that I saw coming out and talking about him and stuff like that, like Lore Master Sotek, had actually done stuff with Arch in the past and said nothing and didn't go after him when the public eye wasn't against him, or at least openly against him as much. But the moment they saw like an opening to go actively against him and reap benefits from it, immediately, people like Lore Master Sotek and similar creators just immediately turned on him and immediately betrayed his ass. And it was kind of disgusting watching it go down. Like, it was like immediate. Like, people weren't waiting for Arch to make a video or anything. It's just immediately, as soon as the screenshots were put up all over Twitter and other similar locations, he was immediately a pariah and everybody was going after him. And I thought it was complete BS. So I made my video calling it out and saying, no, this is not fair, not correct at all. Y'all are just bandwagging on him on a bunch of screenshots where we're not shown the context of the conversation. Like, in isolation, a lot of comments look really fucking bad that are entirely innocent. Like, we need context to make an actual opinion about what's being said here and what it reflects on his character. What we were shown was not enough to make a conclusive judgment, and to see so many people doing that, I was disgusted. So I said, no, I'm not. I don't think this is fair, and I think we need the full context. Otherwise, everyone making a judgment is wrong. Well, shortly after I did that, I got kicked off of a podcast I was going to do with another 40K creator because they were scared and intimidated in the situation. They didn't want to get dragged into it, which was fair. That sucked because I was really looking forward to that podcast. It was the first ever opportunity I was going to have to work with another 40K creator, but they were scared that I would bring in some heat on them that they really didn't want to put up with. So, again, I get it. They backed off, and that was their decision to make. And I found out after that, shortly, from some individuals that I will not name because they were nice enough to give me the heads up that this happened, that a few other 40K creators in their Discords had been, told about me, and that I was taking the unpopular side that they were taking the opposite of. And they wrote me off. And not only did they write me off, but the term blacklisting is a fair way to describe it. Several of them said, I will never work with that guy. He's disgusting. He's this, that, the other. How dare he defend? And they called Arch some particularly bad things I won't repeat. So yeah. Ever since I got blacklisted by a chunk. I won't say a huge chunk. I don't know how huge. What would be enough to constitute huge in this community. But a decent chunk of the creator sphere for 40K has, if they know of me, wrote me off. So yeah, it sucked, but at the same time, that doesn't change what my opinion was. If they want to blacklist me over my take that a man shouldn't get lambasted over a single set of cherry-picked comments, then I guess I'm blacklisted happily, was always my take, and it still is. Again, still sucks. I can stand by my position and everything that I said and still think that the situation sucked. Can't remember who said it, but someone said, if you have haters, you're doing something right. I mean, yeah, that's true. I mean, I wouldn't even necessarily say you're doing something right. If you have haters, you're making an impact. That's a better way to phrase it. I don't think you're necessarily doing right inherently because people don't like you. If you exist, people don't like you. That's kind of the rule, especially on the internet. Like, if people know you exist, they hate you. There will always be people who hate you. Just because you exist on the internet. So, it's just not something worth getting, held up over. I will say this. Being a smaller creator at that time, though, when all that stuff went down, I was very surprised by the response I got. So many people responded. The thing is, I don't want to just focus on the bad. I got a lot of support at the time as well from Arch's base. And not just Arch's base, but just people who were neutral on the topic were like, yeah, these are a bunch of screenshots that we don't have the context around or the conversation they were around. How can we make a judgment? A lot of people supported me. And we're like, yeah, we're not showing anything conclusive. Show us something conclusive and maybe we'll make a judgment. I got a lot of good people like that, and then, of course, Arch's base were like, yeah, thank you for, standing up for him and calling out the BS. And I got to collab with Arch himself for a little bit, too, after that, and, I got to know him a little bit, which was cool. So, there were plenty of good things that came from the situation, but plenty of bad, too. And I tend to choose to focus on the good. Which I think you should do in those situations. Some days, obviously, when I'm being a negative Nancy, I focus only on the bad, but I think everybody's like that at least once in a while. But if there's one thing I learned from that situation is even when there are consequences, you shouldn't stand down or back down when you feel something is right. Even if it hurts you, sometimes the truth needs to be said, especially when no one else is saying it. Oh, by the way, I forgot to show it. I'm using Corvus Black for Citadel paint I used in this mini so far. I'm using Corvus Black for the base. It's because I don't have a black gray from Vallejo. I thought Vallejo did, and I've actually looked for it in the past, but they just have black. So if I want to make a gray black, I have to use like Stonewall gray and black in like a mixture and try and get it right myself. But it's just easier to go with Corvus Black, which is already a black gray. Basically, it's just a slightly lighter black, so you can paint over it with like black and other shades to give it like shadow and stuff. Whereas if you just used a pure black, that's it. You can only do lighter colors on top of it. You can't really shade it after that. So that's why I usually use like a gray black. When you're intending to paint black, don't use black. Use gray black. Hey Noir, the more you know, yeah. Do you have any tips for painting white? My stuff usually turns out grayish or a muted white. With painting white, dry brush it on where you can, because white does not want to go on wet. Which I know sounds strange, but it's just not a color. It's not really a color, that's the thing. It's a shade, and it's a shade that really doesn't want to work with you most of the time. So the best way to do white is do like a base of like a light, really white gray, like really light gray if you can do it. And then from there, dry brush on white. Like don't put white on a wet palette and paint it over the gray. No, go get like a dry brush kind of brush like this, and then get a piece of paper towel and just scrape it off of the paper towel as much as you can until barely anything's coming off. And then you dry brush it on. So yeah, basically with both pigments, white or black, aim to do, oh, sorry, both shades, not pigments. I don't know if that's the right word. But always aim to do as close to those shades as you can without directly being those shades. Like again, a really whited out gray or light gray, rather than doing an actual pure white, and rather than a pure black, same deal. Go as close to that as you can get. But your goal is not to actually hit with those colors. It's to dry brush on those colors over the color closest to them that you can get. First of all, it'll look better anyway. But secondly, it's the only real way to put them on without it looking really chunky or not really going on correctly. Because especially with like Citadel colors, right? Citadel's like Corax White, I think is what it's called. If we're not talking about the primer, we're talking about the actual paint. it is not a friendly white. It does not want to go on wet. So you need to dry brush it on. I hit some of the red with my black. It's okay. We'll clean it up with the red. Yeah, Corax, again, it's the pure whites. They really don't really work with acrylics. So to really just kind of dodge the issue altogether, just don't use pure whites. Not in a wet paint. Use pure whites in a dry brush all day, every day. For lots of reasons and lots of things. But not really directly on a wet palette going on for detailing. Not unless we're doing like little eye droplets and stuff like that. Like really specific examples of why you would use white on a wet palette. And like actually properly brushed on with like an actual detailing brush. Wraithbow's been giving you a little trouble? I mean, I would expect so. Wraithbow's not a pure white. It's a tannish white. It's got a little bit of another color in it. Again, anything that's not a pure white will very rarely give you trouble. will say this: if there's like tongue-tied, if there's an easiest army in all of 40k to paint, it is going to be probably Necrons. Because thank God they have like a lead vegetable primer spray. You just, I'd prime them. I have some Necrons I want to paint up, so my plan is probably what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna spray them with a base of black, let that dry, and then prime it lead belcher, and then from there, like base units, it's just doing some glowing effects on the weapons. And for like elite units, maybe do another metallic on certain bits, like a gold or a Rune Lord brass or stuff like that. And then again, the glowing effects. It's like 3 or 4 paint colors at most. If there's an easy army, and again, if you want to like with anything, you can overcomplicate it with like weathering and stuff like that. But baseline tabletop ready, Necron's got to be like the easiest army to paint. It's like the one army I haven't painted yet too. So that's coming from someone who hasn't actually done it yet. But I can't see how it would be, like, again, unless you're going the extra mile. I can't really see how it can get too complicated. I can see how an individual would complicate it, but I can't really see baseline. Oh crap, I forgot to get that. Got to get the inside of the hand. I thought I got that. Damn it. I think I reapplied that without nicking the black. Too much trim, yeah. So I'm gonna let that dry for just a second, and but as time as I need to fix this fix the trim. How's the new apartment? Congrats, by the way. Pretty messy. Part of my rent agreement and saving some money is when moving in, it's a basement apartment, so everything's like really like low in the apartment building. And the catch when I was moving in, and the reason it's so cheap is it served as a basement for the people who live upstairs, which is like the landlord's family and all that. And as it is a basement, they use it as a storage area. So the place still is full of their old stuff and junk. And part of the moving in process was they were like, all right, you're going to need to help us move it and clean it. Upside is, though, I don't have to put down a security deposit, and I didn't need to pay the first month's rent. So they're like, all right, so you're cool. you're cool on that stuff as long as you help us move all our stuff out. The one downside is, though, is because it is their old stuff, they want to look through it and, like, you know, pick what's garbage and what's not. It's not like they gave me, like, a carte blanche. All right, everything down there's garbage, throw it out. Unfortunately, they're still looking through some of the stuff, so I have to slowly move all the stuff out at their leisure as they figure out what they do and don't like. Which it is taking longer than they thought, so we've already started talking about, like, maybe second month's rent also kind of being put aside, because it's not really my living space yet until we get rid of all their stuff. So slow process, but you know, I've cleaned it. Like, the bedroom is all down here is all set. It's really just the kitchen area and part of, like, their old, like, living room area that needs to be cleaned up. And there's exercise equipment over there that they've never used ever. You know, I've talked about, like, keeping it, maybe if they're okay with that, if it still works. But again, it's all up in the air right now. So it's going good. I mean, like, it's not like a bad living situation. Again, I've got, like, my whole office corner all set. The bedroom's all set. It's just, like, the living room area and the kitchen area are, like, what's kind of a disaster at the moment. A couple spots I want to touch up with the red. Get charged for the Emperor. You know, it would be a good excuse to exercise since it's their old stuff and they never used it really anyway. So hopefully it still all works. It's not a lot. Like, it's not like 20 pieces of exercise equipment, but there's a treadmill, which cardio, obviously, good for it. There's also I don't know exactly. It's both a bench press thing. You know, it's like a bench bar with, like, a couple of weights for it, and then next, connected to it is also, like, the one you pull from behind your back. That you also load weights on. You know, I'd have to take a picture to explain what it is, but it's like two weightlifting things in one. And there's like one other thing, but the third thing is definitely broken because I can't even tell what it is. It's like missing parts for sure, whatever we used to be. So honestly, I'm getting jacked just from trying to move all their stuff out. I gotta do the second. I'm cool on the reds. Probably not. Probably gonna notice something as soon as I start painting another color, but just being as careful as I can be. Alright, now for Retributor Gold on all the bladed blades. I was actually hoping the other day that tongue-tied that the Leviathan box set was gonna be in my local hobby store. Not because I was planning on buying it. It's because I was gonna be curious to like note it and then be like, all right, how long does this take to sell? Because I've been curious to the interest in my local area for like people who are interested in 10th, and I'm willing to bet money quite a few people are, because a lot of the folks around here are like super. You know, they're not really bothered by like small changes and stuff like that to the hobby. I've kind of noticed it like when I go to like play tournaments and stuff like that. People are really casual. And they're still really cool people. I don't want them out to be like, you know, not disinterested. I mean, they're still hobbyists after all, but they tend not to like stress about small stuff. So, I apologize. That's neighbor's dogs. They have like 4 of them. Like, I swear one's a beagle, and I don't know what the other like 3 are. But there's the beagle, and there's like one other dog that are really yippy. I think I saw 3 or 4 boxes of Leviathan at my local store the other day. Really? There's like none of mine, so maybe that's a sign that that mine are selling out that quickly. dry. Bugs are cool. Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is a warrior is a work in progress, but this is what he's roughly going to look like by the time I'm done. It's basically High Fleet Behemoth, though. You know, I'm going for Cornate, you know, corrupted Tyranids. I know, like, lore-wise, it's not friendly, but that's like thematically what I'm going. It's like kind of like a homebrew idea, but effectively it ends up just looking like High Fleet Behemoth. So, and like game rules wise, High Fleet Behemoth do kind of like play like the corn, so a little bit. So, effectively, about High Fleet Behemoth are Cornate Tyranids. It's just all this would be black as opposed to, you know, gold, which will Retributor gold, by the way. Where I will be putting down Reichland Flesh Shade to make it look bronze. Which looks super, super dope. I mean, that's what all these guys are. That's what you're thinking for your bugs? Nice. Yeah, I don't have too many Tyranids in terms of like my collection so far. I still have way more, you know, orcs are my main army, so I have like 6,000 points of orcs. For Tyranids, I think I only have like, I want to say 800 or 900 points for Tyranids. I think I still need more. I definitely need more bigger monsters because I only have like one Hive Tyrant for like a big monster, and like in like the boxes, I think I have one more bigger Tyranid, and then the rest are mainly like Hormagaunts and Termagants and Gene Stealers and of course Warriors. So I need to get more big Nids. Yeah, they're the really big Nids. I know they're coming with like the Leviathan box set. I kind of commented on this a little while back, but you guys noticed that like the last few editions, well, mainly I'm talking about Indominus and now Leviathan. Both of those like box sets and stuff like that, and like the theme of the editions has been Space Marines versus this specific Xenos faction. And I know it's always pretty much been like every edition of 40k pretty much always has been like Space Marines or in Guard versus some new threat coming. But like thematically it's been like really strong the last like 2 editions. And with the last one, it was Necrons, and with it came a huge Necron facelift for the line, as well as a lot of updated models and rules and data sheets. They used the 9th edition as an excuse to actually, you know, give some TLC to one of the Xenos factions, and now they're doing it again with Leviathan, with Tyranids. We're finally getting a facelift for the Tyranids and getting, you know, some attention to the line, data sheet updates, and new units. And I hope that in, like, 11th edition, it's kind of sad we have to wait for a new edition for them to do that stuff, for, like, a huge hype for a new expansion. I say expansion. New edition for them to, like, update the lines properly and do, like, a full range update and facelift. But, you know, hopefully next one is going to be... Well, that's the thing, Noah, is I think it's always going to be Space Marines versus, because Space Marines are the poster boys. They always have to have the poster boys on each edition. So no matter what, sadly, it's going to be Ultramarines, because no other chapter or legion exists, apparently. But Ultramarines versus... And it'd be cool. Actually, the thing is, with the Lion being released, this 10th edition was the perfect opportunity... By the way, 10th edition is absolute shit, in my opinion, in terms of like what they've decided to do to quote-unquote streamline the game. But my vitriol aside, and hopefully, you know, for people who've had a chance to play 10th, I hope you are playing it. But just looking at all the rules and looking at everything they've done to quote-unquote streamline it, it looks infuriating to me. How much that they've dumbed down the game further. 9th edition, I think, already did that too much. But here we are again. But anyway, with with 10th edition coming out and being announced and being released around the same shortly after the announcement with the Lion. Obviously, they knew that they were bringing the Lion back basically by 10th edition. It just boggles my brain why they still didn't take this opportunity to yet again still use Space Marines. Like, I get it, like they're your poster boy faction, but there's other forms and colors of Space Marines other than fucking blue. So why didn't they do Dark Angels versus Tyranids? Why is it yet a fucking again the Ultramarines? Who at GW is just... I imagine they have like a life-sized fuck doll of Gilliman or something. Like there's just this huge boner for the boys in blue of 40k, and it just infuriates me. You have other chapters, you have other Space Marines that are so... Hey, listen, if you're looking for like the you don't want to offend anybody, like certain ones, like with certain chapters that definitely, you know, might have religious iconography that akin to something in the real world, or it might have this, or might have that. Fine, put on the salamanders for Christ's sake. You know, what's offensive about the salamanders? They're dragon themed dudes, like, with like fire and shit, and they're like the kindest, coolest, closest to possibly family friendly 40k gets. So just, you know, something other than fucking Ultramarines. And they should have done Dark Angels. It should have been Dark Angels versus Leviathan, versus the Tyranids for the Leviathan box set and for the Tyranids. That's what it should have fucking been. Why the hell was it yet again Ultramarines? They just can't fucking help themselves. It's like the only Space Marines they ever feel like they can fucking put on the box. And it's infuriating. It's infuriating. Hey, Ruriko. Tongue-tied. I did it again. Ruriko, welcome. How you doing? Yeah, I'm working on my my nids. I'm letting the paint dry a little bit here before I continue. Yeah, I'm aiming for him to look like this one. Trying to get my warriors all on the same page. Actually, I think I'm good to do the dry brush on the base now. Yeah, I think I'll be good. I'm just eyeballing it to see if there's any patches I'm going to miss. Alright. Now to do the dry brush. Dusty. That, and then a little bit of white. Should be the color I'm looking for. Maybe a bit more white. Much better. That's a lighter purple, yeah. It's a dry brush to help the base pop more. And a nice cool contrast with the red, black, and bronze. Again, brass, bronze, it'll look like that. Of the rest of it. I don't think that's light enough though. Like, I thought it was light enough, but it's barely helping it pop. There we go. Much better. Good example of dry brushing. Really helps those edges and those details pop. That's how you capture the same effect you get on these bases. Pretty much, anyway. Although this one's a bit more of a pure purple. I think with these ones I did a red purple for the base and then did like a purple pink for dry brush. Oh well, it's close enough. You can tell it's still the same idea. The idea is this highly contrasts with a miniature on top of it, and plus it gives it like an alien terrain. Like the Tyranids are on a really alien planet to our own that would have like a purple gravel and stuff like that. So it's why I did it for this army. It really helps the Tyranids pop on the base, on their bases and everything, and I think it'll help them really pop during like a tournament or something like that. I always like. You know, painting is a huge part of the hobby for me, so for me this is so important to do. To like help my miniatures pop, and at the same time it's like it's not the only thing I enjoy in the hobby, of course, but this is one of the most fun parts of like the tabletop hobbies is collecting and painting miniatures. Should be dry now. Which means I should be able to do some more touch-ups. I got the tail there. Beautiful. Oh, thank you. I appreciate the praise. Alright. Just gotta hit the teeth, and then I think from there I can then apply the washes and then do the edge highlighting. think I can apply washes. I'm going to use Citadel's Reichland Flesh Shade on the Retributor Gold to create my brass. Dries. Alright, from there, we're going to do Agrax Earthshade for all the red bits. And for the black bits, we're going to hit it with some Null Oil. That one's going to be the hardest one to actually see any kind of change on. But I think it'll look okay. Hey, what is hate? How is it going, ladies and gentlemen? Pretty good. I'm currently finishing up the warrior I started this stream. Goal is for him to look fairly close to this guy by the time we're done. Yeah, we're almost there. We got all the base coats and we just started the wash stage. Also did the dry brush on the base and all that. That's all set. So now we're just applying the washes. Alright, so we're going to do the major wash first, which is Agrax Shade. That goes over most of it. And then from there we'll do the So how you been doing today? What is hate? Been having a good one? Just work or family, dear? Oh, is that a response to Noah? Where's your water cup? Oh, that sucks. You're a DM. Not bad. Just got back from the comic book store from more D&D Insanity. Fun. I really didn't half the time it is kids. I mean, it could still be fun to run D&D with kids. I mean, I did that when I was a substitute teacher. I was running a D&D group during their games club days. Granted, I missed a lot of days because I just couldn't stay because I had so many other things I had to do. But the days I could go, the kids were having fun, and, you know, we were setting up a session, running things. Granted, because you're running with kids, you can't really do anything serious. So if you're an adult running it with kids, it can get a little irritating what you have to limit yourself on. But at the same time, there's still plenty of fun opportunities you can have. It's just not going to be as fun for you as it is for them. So you definitely got to taste the bullet on it and be like, all right, I'll run it for you guys so we all have some fun. Oh, you did how to paint. Oh, that would be so much fun. That'd be so much fun. I'm sure the kids got a kick out of that one. At least I hope so. most kids, even the less artistically inclined, tend to like get into like stuff like that, and like it'll interest them at the very least. So. Plus, if nothing else, then everybody gets like covered in paint, and it's still worth a laugh. That dry. Well, not really let it dry as much as let it sit for a second. I'll apply the Nuln Oil to the rest. You do DM Warhammer Fantasy again? It was fun. Death Watch 2. Yeah, I've never got the opportunity to play the pen and paper 40k game, unfortunately. Never had the opportunity. Never had someone to run it with me, but I'm definitely not confident enough to DM a game for it. Don't know how different it is from my experience DMing Dungeons and Dragons. Well, I think the door's open because there's a bunch of flies coming in on me. But adults only, since it can be a bit much for kids. The war game or role playing, or just in general? Because I know I would agree Warhammer and Warhammer 40k are a bit much for kids to absorb and handle. I grew up on stuff myself. Yeah, I mean, I grew up on like Star Trek, Star Wars, and some of the darker elements that came with that. But not quite the levels of 40k. I didn't get into that till I was 13. Well, 12 or 13. 12. I was about 12, almost 13. That's what just hella complicated. Really? Yeah, Warhammer is a bit much to take in compared to the watered down versions of D&D they have now. True. 5th edition D&D is so easy to get into. The only way you wouldn't be able to get into 5th edition D&D is if you genuinely didn't want to and weren't trying. You had fun making a Space Wolf, Dark Angel, and Templar get along. The thing is, a Templar would get along with a Space Wolf, well, theoretically. More than they would get along with a Dark Angel, because their Dark Angels and Templars are very different. They look similar, but it's very different in terms of their ideals. Where Space Wolves and Templars would not get along is when it comes to the religious aspect. That's where the communication and relationship would entirely break down. But if it's just like about martial combat, they'd get along in regards to that. Enjoyment of fighting, they get along about that. You know, there's plenty of things that they'd get along over. It's just the one major thing that neither side would get along with very well would be their religion conversation. Alright, I'm gonna leave this guy here for a second, and I'm gonna double check the door is closed because the little flies are coming in. Nope, was not shut. Yeah, my bad, was not shut. I just thought the bugs were really loud and I could hear them through the door, but no, it was just wasn't shut. Now, Space Wolf was a rune priest. The Templar player kept twitching every time he was around. Yeah, that would do it. It's still drawing. Don't want to immediately start painting. I'll give it a second. Ultimate religious nut team up. Maccabi and Janissaries, Sisters of Battle, and Black Templars. Yes. I wanted to think about that for a second. Is anyone more religious? I mean, other than Chaos, of course. No, loyalist-wise, yes. Those are all the most religious. Except maybe Krieg. Krieg are pretty fucking far gone in regards to the religious nuttery. I mean, their lives are entirely about dying in some kind of significant way in the name of the Emperor or something. I don't know if I'd agree with that. I think Krieg are more religious. I think Maccabi and Janissaries are more religious, in terms of how they conduct themselves. But in terms of actual, religious nuttery, or their, what do you call it? Through their actions of religiousness, I think Krieg win out over Maccabi and Janissaries. Not by much. It's not like a landslide, but I think Krieg are pretty definitive, crazier nuts. They will sacrifice themselves en masse in the name of the Emperor, mass genocides. And they'll also bombard a city for decades on end, endlessly, just because they might have said some shit about the Emperor or tried to separate from the Imperium and disgrace the Emperor. They will bombard them with artillery for a decade and a half. They fucking nut jobs. I'll take no lesser mask wearers. Alright. yet. Not really, no. Damn it. Yeah, because what I got left to do is the edge highlighting. I want to do the yellow eyes like I've been doing for them, but I really can't reach in there that well. Plus, it's really hard for me. Well, no, I think I can get that. I think I can get that. I just have to use one of my thinner brushes. But I think I can get it. Alright, we're going to use Flash Gets Yeller. Flash Gets Yellow. Walking go, won't make cramp. Now this is for Tyranids. Oh. Alright, gotta be really careful. It's okay if I overshoot a little bit, it just makes their eyes look like they're glowing. Of course I gotta water it a bit more though for it to actually look like that, not just like their eyes are really sized. Worst comes to worst, when it dries, I'll just do another edging with the red. Well, we're pretty on par with where I was with this. At least for right now, I can start mixing together the edge highlight mix. Do the Maccabians have miniatures yet? Are you talking about from 40K? Sorry, from GW? Or from, like, Etsy or Cults or Thingiverse? Because my answer will change depending on the parameters here. If you mean in general, like do they exist? Not from GW, I don't believe. But you can't get, like, people have made, like, for example, you can't get Krieg really from GW either, but I have half a Krieg army because people on like Cults and My Mini Factory and stuff like that have made them. You just gotta look in the right places and have a 3D printer. to do some major corrections here. Red makers, yeah, I love red makers. They're pretty cool. They do, but don't think GW has any. They all just look Candian for the most part. You mean Cadian? They may have a random series of specials like the Catachans. Yeah. Top 3 regiments for me: Maccabian, Stellar, and Catachan. For me, I'd say Cadian, Catachan, and I don't know. Let me put Katie in that. If we're going by special factor, I probably want. I mean, I like Katie and Coulter a lot. Like, they're really cool. But I'll say Catachan, Krieg, and Valhallan Winter Soldiers. Those are probably like my top 3. You do wonder how many chapter there is, and if any other than the Templar and Space Wolves that don't follow the Codex. Oh, there's numerous chapters that don't follow the Codex. Numerous. There's so many chapters that don't. It's actually kind of a weird trope in like the secondary chapters and subsidiary chapters of the founding legions. It's kind of interesting how many GW has written in as official canon that don't give a rat's ass about Gilliman's Codex. GW are in love with Gilliman. Like, he is like their poster boy. He is their favorite, hands down. Yet, for some reason, they wrote in so many goddamn chapters that do not give a rat's ass about the Codex Astartes. It's actually weirdly common amongst chapters to not give a rat's ass about it. It is a suggestive rulebook at best for most chapters. The only chapters that tend to like really like follow it rigidly are either descended from Ultramarines or descended from a couple of the other ones that sided with Gilliman when he tried to apply the Codex. And as for like Dorn's successors, though, like other than the Imperialists themselves, who he ordered directly to follow it because he didn't want there to be a civil war because he's a better Primarch and character and person than Gilliman ever will be and could be. Sorry, that couldn't really hold that past my throat. But Dorn ordered the Imperial Fist to follow it until they were forced to apply the Last Wall Protocol. That is the only time they're allowed to break it. Meanwhile, every successor of Dorn's pretty much said, fuck you, and said, no, we're not doing it. Oh, yeah, Dorn is one that they have yet to mess him up. Yeah. Yeah. The Space Wolves don't give a shit about it, obviously, but they never did to get-go. Let's see. There are some that like really follow it as closely as they can because they see it as like a religious text. But like I said, those are mostly like Ultramarine successors. I believe the Blood Angels follow it. I'm pretty sure the Blood Angels follow it. I'm trying to think of who follows it because it's easier for me to think of like chapters that don't follow it. The Salamanders follow it mostly, though they also the best way I could put it for the Salamanders is they see it as more interpretive. Like, they don't think of it as rigid, yes, to a T you need to follow these steps, order of operations, and shit. They see it as more, this is like the guideline, but you can deviate from it given the right circumstances. I'd say the Salamanders have the right approach with it, and if anything, ironically, what Gilliman wanted it to be, which is, this is a guideline, and yes, some of it is supposed to be rigid, but most of it can be reinterpreted given specific scenarios. Meanwhile, the Ultramarines and the Imperial Fist had to follow it like religious text after he went to sleep. See, the Dark Angels, both halves of the Dark Angels don't really follow it whatsoever. They do incidentally, but they don't. I don't think they do it intentionally. Yeah, like I said, it's easier to think of chapters that don't fucking follow it. I mean, I could list off all of the Chaos Trader Marines for extra credit that don't follow it, but I feel like I'd be here all day. And of course, they don't follow it. They're against the Loyalists, but that's kind of my point. Yeah, I'm really fucking up this one. No! The Flesh Tearers really don't like it. Yeah, they don't. Just gotta do the rim. You like the mornings because your dad was a Marine? I mean, yeah, I suppose that's a reason. Let's see, so it took me 2.5 hours to do one warrior. Sounds about right. I'll tell you this, when it comes to speed painting, I'm probably the worst person to go to, but when it comes to detail painting, I think I'm pretty good. Oh man. Yeah, I have a very high bar for what I consider the bare minimum for like an army I want to go for. One thing I will say is like I utterly refuse to like go to a tournament or an official game with an unpainted army or only a partially painted army. Something about that just like twinges me a bit. Like I feel like I've skipped a lot of steps if I do that. That's why I almost always play with my orcs these days, because that's the only army I have completely painted. Everything else is still in progress or only partially painted. So it'll be a long time before I actually get to play with my Nids or get to play with my Space Marines or get to play with my Horus Heresy army. It'll be a long while before I get to play with any of those. It's going to be orcs all the way for a long time. But eventually I'll have enough of all of those painted to start playing other factions on the tabletop. Still drying a bit on a couple spots. But this is the warrior I've been painting for the stream. think we'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know it was only the one miniature, but that tends to be how most of my streams go. I focus on like one mini. For once, though, I actually got to finish it within the stream, though. Most of the time, I like stream for like 3 or 4 hours. Still barely finish a mini, but man. Some happy little death bugs. I think they are. They're happy not to be gray anymore. Unfortunately, the vast majority of them are still gray. Oh man, I always like love these painting sessions, and this stream was great because you know it does feel a lot better to paint like this with like the camera above me, and you know not having to lean past the camera. You know, what would you guys say that this is an okay camera angle, or you know, or even is it better than the camera angle I had before, where it was like right in front of me looking directly at the mini? Because this one's definitely better for my back and my posture, and I'm able to maintain painting like this a lot longer than I could with the camera right in front of me, because that was incredibly taxing on my back and my posture. So, now what would you guys say? This is satisfactory, good, enjoyable? Not really, Paris. Like, for me to do a separate camera angle, I'd have to completely take apart the camera on the tripod. Oh, shoot. I forgot. This camera's a bit testy in regards to, like, playing with the cords. But, yeah, like, it's connected directly to a desk-mounted tripod, so I'd have to take it off of the tripod and completely reset it up, too. No, I don't have multiple cameras. I have the one camera. This works fine? I'm glad it works. I appreciate the answer to my question. Thank you, Matthew Gordon, for the thumbs up. Think it's good? Well, good. Love to hear it. I had to zoom out a little bit, like... That's it fully zoomed out. Yeah, the reason I had zoomed in is because I was trying to have this be the backdrop rather than that. I guess I'll call it there, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like before you guys head out. I will hopefully do another stream like this semi-soonish. I'm trying to get the next Fox Radio Show episode done, but like I said, I've got a lot more I got left to do to it. But once that's set, it's set. So, all right. Have a good one, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Love ya. Bye-bye.